You seen this girl around here?
She wanted a gun.
This is a ticking time bomb.
You're killing your wife.
You need to tell me.
Where's your wife, Nick?
I hit her. I never touched her.
In her own words, this man may truly kill me.
I'm Glenn Garland, and this is Editors on Editing. Kirk Baxter began his career editing top-notch commercials before exploding onto the feature film scene, editing Benjamin Button, for which he was nominated for the Oscar, the BAFTA, and the Eddie. He has since been nominated for 4 Eddies, winning one for The Social Network, been nominated for 2 Emmys, one for his work on House of Cards, and won 2 Academy Awards for The Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Kirk, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a real pleasure.
Welcome.
So tell me how you first got into editing as a career.
My first career was a dog's body. I believe that's what I was described as, the junior everything. So I was kind of going, I'll do that, sure, yep.
So your eagerness.
So yeah, I was keen to do it all, but it was the editing that I was really, really attracted to.
And did that lead to commercials? How did you go?
No, then they would bring in freelance editors to cut things, and I would end up assisting them. I'd learn a little bit off each person, where literally a frame is critical because you want to pack as much as you can in, but still get clarity. And I find with David's movies, he came out of that short format as well. I think more music videos, but he certainly has done a lot of commercials.
And how did you make the transition from commercials to feature films?
I think with the help of Angus Wall, who I've co-cut a bunch of David's movies besides Gone Girl with. He had been working with David since the beginning of his career, and he was doing Zodiac. And Angus and I worked in the same company doing commercials together. So I got pulled in to help him get back up to camera.
Tell me about your work process with David.
We work a lot through this program called Pix. It's a delivery device for him to view things. So when he's shooting, I'll be assembling. I'm probably 2 days behind him. And first I'll send him the selects, because there's a lot of volume with David's work. I think he's quite famous for that. So I'll tend to sort of, before I start cutting it, I'll organize selects from wide to close in scene order, what I believe the scene order will be, and dissect it down into bite-sized chunks of what I think the best of it was. And I'll share that with David, and a lot of the time he'll make notes of good, great, watch out for this person in the back, aim for this, too earnest, and just give me, general
so you're
feedback.
Not going down the wrong road. So he types in different notes, and with Pix, I believe you're able to actually draw on frames.
Yeah, it's like a football game.
And on this movie, I believe on your previous films, you cut on Final Cut, and this one you guys did Premiere Pro. Can you tell me about the choice to do that and working with Premiere Pro?
Well, to be frank, I really did it because that's what Fincher and Peter Mavromatis, the head of post-production, and Tyler Nelson, the first assistant, wanted me to do. With Adobe, when they sort of say, we'll work with you, they will work with you. And if you have something legitimate that is required to change to be for the better of the greater good of editors, it will change.
And so it was easy to bring in, visual effects as they were going. And
most of the films that we've done recently always require a lot of screen comps. So there's a lot of interacting with the screen.
Well, speaking of like the camera being sort of still, there wasn't a lot of shaking. It was very
it's a
very
steady
classical compositions.
Yeah, David likes to sort of take out the human aspect of camera moves, and he shoots wider than what's needed, a lot wider, so that we've always got a lot of space. We're able to stabilize and reframe and recorrect and perfect, so that on all occasions you're selecting for performance.
Well, you're really focused in on the actors because there isn't any drift. And
he does a lot of locked off too, so that we're able to split the screens. And if you've got more than one actor in the frame, you're pretty sure you can kind of bet on it that 99% of the time I've split the screen, sped up someone for their reaction time, or I've replaced the take in the background, and they're two different things. And you kind of you manhandle all that stuff to get the best out of it. And that's why he'll lock it off, so you can really get in there and manipulate it.
And it also created sort of this icy sort of world that, the characters felt like they were broken.
He removes anything that's got nothing to do with the intent, so nothing's distracting your eye. The smallest things or extras or the way the background movement is happening or reflections. Like you're just basically stripping it all away and kind of going, this shot will only serve for the purpose we intend.
And you? Who are you?
I think that there's probably more, but there was only one handheld shot that I noticed, like when Ben is racing away from the media into the police car. And because that's the only one that I noticed, it felt very much like he was being assaulted because David, he almost saved it for that particular piece.
I remember seeing it and wondering if it should have a different look, like it's coming from one of their cameras, but it was more just about the chaos of the moment.
So you use a shot at the beginning that you then bookend. And what was the choice to do that? It's like this perfect shot of this perfect hair, this perfect turn of this woman.
I think it's the facade of all things. I mean, that's something that David was really interested in, is the idea that we're all sort of pretending. We have our internal selves and then what we present to the world. And I think this movie sort of speaks a lot to those themes.
Tell me about the choice to use the shots of the town at the beginning, intercut with the titles, and then you have this beautiful, huge house. Like, that seems like the town is very run down.
It was written into the script, and David wanted to present the town to speak, I think, to the recession. And, you know, it's the decay of the town, the decay of the marriage, it's all of the above. He had a track as well, but it had this really aggressive beat to it. So that was the very first thing that we cut. And then we took that track out and replaced it with what Trent and Atticus did, but it's this really sleepy track. And I'm so pleased it happened that way around, because I don't know that I would have cut it that aggressively. For something that's so languid, it's really fast.
It's moving.
Thumps along. Yeah. Which is very Fincher. It's like you want to, like we always try to get as much sort of content in the least amount of time, but it's a really aggressive way to edit with that sort of sparse, quicksandy, sort of everything's okay music. But I like that juxtaposition. I really liked it in the end. I was always conscious of that. I was always sort of going, God, would I have like done big sort of dopey dissolves all the way through this, or if I hadn't have done it that way around?
I really like the score a lot. It's very atmospheric, but it also felt like you're really in the headspace of these characters and things like that. And I know that Trent and Atticus have done that before.
David briefed me on the music beforehand, because I was saying to him, look, we need music. I'm assembling this thing. It's like, give me some music. I need the music. I need the music. And I didn't want to start laying up temp music. First, David said to me that he was doing some chiropractor stuff on his back. They were playing all that spa music, the sort of everything's going to be fine. Yeah, and he said, just use that. And I was like, what do you mean? But if I go into iTunes and do spa music, like 10,000 tracks turn up. And he goes, yeah, but like pick the second one and it'll be perfect. I was like, no, don't. And I resisted this and I didn't do it. Because it's not, I mean, that idea is good, but it's in David's words, it's all about the casting of that idea, which is Trent and Atticus. So he sort of said the same thing to them. Trent's looking at him going, what? The intent is just to sort of make you kind of go...
Get you comfortable.
Yeah.
And then slowly turn up the heat. The sound design was really cool. I mean, the media, with that first scene when he goes and does the basically statement to the press, and just the camera clicks were just like assaulting. It almost felt like cicadas.
But he's hitting it, when he shot it, he was doing it with all the lights. So when you study it, it's like, because this was a note of David's, it's like, no, we don't hear it unless we're seeing it. And they all just land on every single flash.
And then when they're going and searching for the body, it's just the insects and the cicadas.
That was in a lot of the dailies. Like Ren sent me an email early on, kind of going before he was on the film, saying, how does it sound? And I sent him like a still of a huge cicada. So, which meant we're going to have to sync a lot of it. But that was always surround. I think that's just Missouri.
Sure.
Yeah, and that sound also gives you the heat, or the feeling of the heat.
Tell me about your choice to use fade outs and fade ins on the transitions to the past. And then it almost becomes a theme throughout.
Yeah, it was. We didn't want the audience to get lost in it. I think every time we were going back to the diary, it was a conscious decision to sort of go, stop.
Give
reset.
it a structural
And I made them
blueprint.
I made them a lot faster at first, and it was from watching an assembly where David kind of went, I think we've got to slow them down more. But we enjoyed coming out of them. Like we always did hard cuts coming out.
Yeah, it was interesting. You'd go in something
Yeah.
very slow, but then you'd have like an audio pre-lap and then
Yeah.
hit it hard.
I'd get aggressive coming out because I think people would sort of accept, coming back to where they left.
I found it also interesting how it started off being that, but then even within some of the transitions in the past, when you would jump from the library to the Chinese restaurant, you'd have a quick fade
Yeah.
in the library.
We knew that we needed to compress the front part of the story. So that's the only real areas where we pulled out information, we pulled out scenes in the flashbacks and joined them into one area. So instead of sort of continually kind of doing a little bit of today with Nick and the procedural and then intercutting it with a flashback and then this sort of ping-ponging thing, we sort of made the choice to allow yourself to get a clue, follow that clue to the father's house instead of interrupting it. And then the next time you did a diary entry, that's when we started to do the fades in the middle of the stories. So we joined what would have been two separate occasions together into one area. So you weren't interrupting the story flow. So there was less ping-ponging. We were pretty diligent in allowing the right amount of time to sort of go, we're presenting something new to you from a different time. We'd always stop, go diary, fade up. We'd just do that mechanism every time until everyone was taught.
Sure.
And then we threw it away. When lots of roads all meet and four storylines all kind of intersect, that's the only time when I don't do the fades, because by then I've sort of gone, the audience has learned. Well, everything's now connecting.
I thought one of the things that was powerful is it was always fade, but then on that you had a cut to a black.
That one I had no problem holding for as long as possible. It was like, let everyone stew in this for a second.
Exactly.
And then go, whack, let's start. I just find it really satisfying as a piece of filmmaking. That's the whole turning point of the movie.
Sure.
And just dessert, like so.
And it moves too. I mean, that whole montage. It's going faster than you can keep up with it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
I love doing that, and we did that from the beginning to the end. Like we never were not working in that.
Well,
sequence.
it seemed like the pace sort of was sort of a slow burn, and then it just got faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
and sort of like the chips start falling quicker and quicker.
Everything's set up. Like the reason I think you can move through at such a pace is that every little box that's being ticked was presented earlier, and it's smart writing, so you can really thump through it. And it's the voiceover that's leading you as well, the sort of the leanness of the bouncing ball. That was something where David and I were constantly kind of going, we could get this out, we could also get this out, we could all get a few more frames off this bit. And there was supposed to be more titles in that section, but the titles made shots longer and we're like, screw it, let's not have the titles, just faster, 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 faster. Yeah.
Well, the titles I thought were great too, with 2 Days Gone, and then it's Hours, and then the two stories are merging, And
it's an interesting movie. I've never done one like it, because it's the first, I guess, almost 40 minutes is you're just sort of like pulling the slingshot back. And as we were assembling it, because we've watched it so many times, we're really self-conscious of this.
You're sort of wondering, we need to speed it up.
When you've watched the movie a bunch of times, you're very self-critical that you're taking too long to get to this point.
You might be boring the audience.
Yeah, so that first part of it, it's fun kind of going, is he guilty? Is he not guilty? Is he screwed? It's like an audience enjoys that.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have watched it that many times, kind of going, let me like do you guys a favor and get this as curt as it can be.
Sure. So when you were recording the ADR, was it all done on the set, or did you re-record it? Or
no, I think it was done 2 to 3 times. It was a lengthy process because there was a lot of voiceover. When Amy's talking from the past, you have to be really careful with the tone.
I will practice believing my husband loves me, but I could be wrong.
And it almost sounded like you put some reverb on it,
Earlier.
in the past.
So it was
earlier.
like it coming from the past.
Yeah.
Well, there was more reverb when it was coming from the clues.
It seemed like there's not a lot of very tight close-ups, which was interesting.
They're sparingly used. They're always, I think they have such great power and each time they're used, it dilutes.
Dilutes
so
the
it's
power.
sort of, they're like a knockout punch that you use
Sure.
when you really need them.
Well, I thought one of the effective uses of them were when they're looking at the crime scene
Yeah.
for the very first time. Everything's very wide and very still, and then suddenly the first Post-it note gets put down. And we're tight.
Yeah.
And it's like every time a Post-it note got put down, it was like, oh shit, he's in trouble.
I know. I so enjoyed Ben so much in that scene because you're watching it sort of going, what's he worried about? Is he worried about his wife or is he worried about what they're finding? Like what?
Well,
like he's on the back foot through all of that going, oh Jesus, but you don't know the why.
No. I mean, the performances are brilliant because half the time they're playing for other people. They're acting for the media. They're acting for, you know, their spouse. And everybody, there's so much gray and it's so rich.
I think we all have a bit of that, don't we?
Mhm.
Like we all kind of have our little facades that we carry around. It really speaks to that whole film. Like Ben, his role's a little more that as soon as it's not the police or the media, you can tell he's his honest self.
Well, he lets his guard down with
there's
his
an
sister
exhaustion
Margot.
to him. Yeah. So you thoroughly enjoy that sort of vulnerability of him, which I think is very brave acting. And for me, I kept teasing David of sort of saying, you know, a comedy by David Fincher. Like there is so much humor in it.
Well,
I think,
it is
when
very
he's
funny.
putting that facade on. The darker it gets, the more I laugh. I think my natural taste sort of gravitates to the sort of movies David makes. When it's nasty, I'm smiling. We found this with Social Network as well, that most of the humor comes in right at the very end when you're doing it, when everything's just so tightly wound that's when
The
it
audience
became
has a chance
funny.
to let go a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's just like when you've kind of really like sanded all the edges off and it's just all done, then you can really giggle at it. There's a common theme which I really enjoy, is that whether they're right or wrong, they're unapologetic, and they sort of stand tall and they are what they are and they do what they do, and that's and then you let the sort of plot move around that, and that's like it's great fun to know where your character's supposed to be going. It's like, yes, they've done these sort of terrible deeds, but they're living with it.
Well, I think we also identify with them because the characters are smart.
Yeah.
So it allows you to go, wait, I'm sort of liking this person who's really, you know,
Which
not
again
a
makes
good
you
person,
feel
which
awkward.
is yeah.
And giggle.
And those photos that were taken of him with, you know, with his wife's photo behind him, basically
There's
that
that.
right there. Yeah.
It's the chin and the grin. This is a
And
pivotal scene.
it's interesting because the audience knows the context, but the people watching the TV set don't. They just see this and they're like, what an asshole.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, no, totally. It's the same way you're presenting it in a trailer is what the intent of the movie is. It's hilarious. I mean, when you read this in the script, you kind of go, oh. And then when the dailies turned up, you knew exactly which take it was going to be. When the dailies turned up, I took a picture of my iPhone and texted that shot to David, which is like, yes. and he's like, I know.
Well, reactions play such a huge part in the way you put the movie together. It's always like what different people's perceptions are. With Detective Gilpin, he has very few lines of dialogue, but you know exactly how he feels about
He never changes.
You know, and
he's one of those simple characters.
You know exactly, and Margot, you know, you know when when he gives that smile, it's like she rolls her eyes, like, oh, my idiot twin brother.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he's doing it again.
Yeah. She's so on the inside track with him. It's funny. But I loved Gilpin. I loved cutting any scene that he was in, or if there's any opportunity, because he's got a bunch of close-ups in it, because David would sort of get in with that coverage and you'd wait for that perfect moment for him to kind of, he's got these huge eyes and it's all done with his eyes, the subtlest of things. And you know that he's watching Nick constantly going,
he's like
I don't believe you. I hate
Exactly.
you. I'm going to get you.
Another scene that I just thought was brilliant was the intercutting when he's discovering what clue number 3 means. The race between him figuring it out and the detectives figuring it out.
That was the hardest scene to edit in the movie. The intent is always the same with how it was written. Like the end result is what was written on the page, I think. But it was more the granular formation of it. We messed with that a lot. It was every time I kind of tweaked it, I disappeared for a day because it's so many storylines that all crash together in one place. But some of the scenes were actually repurposed and came from a different spot. That it was like an earlier flashback that we got rid of and then actually used it in that section. I mean, shots of Amy. But it was really, really challenging because it was...
Well, you have narration and you have, Ben, and then you've got the detectives and you've got all these different elements and they're all
but
crashing
it's also
together.
things from the past that we'd set up a formula of how we present that information with the fade-ins and those. And at this point, we throw them all away. And now we're just really racing. Mm-hmm. And you've got the kind
That's
of...
probably
the
why it
presence
was
of
effective
the
too.
clue... that you've got the voiceover from the clue, but you've also got the voiceover that's coming from the diary, but now you're not presenting it with the diary in the beginning and taking all these things for granted, and it really roars along. And even from there, like we sort of cut it in a way when Nick's sort of looked towards the house, I've then got shots of Amy, so it looks like she's interacting with him, and it's all weaving together, but it's shots from the past connecting with shots of the present, and it's like it's complex, and each time you pull one out, it all snaps and breaks, and there was a lot of iterations of that. It's that thing always that we're always trying to do is present something complex to appear simple. Yes. And I think when you watch it, it'd be easy to sort of go, what's he talking about?
I could tell the complexity because, I'm an editor too, but it wasn't where I was lost.
Yeah, the idea is that it's supposed to be
and I was
simple.
emotionally tuned into the characters. So it's not like the complexity sort of got in the way of me identifying with the characters.
And the intercutting of it, because I knew when we were in the basement, let's say I've got 6 good moments of the detectives, then I've kind of got that many opportunities for intercutting what Nick does, so it all gets shaped around. And then if you pull them all up one further, then you've lost one here, and it's this constant moving, and it never really locked down until the final. And every time we changed it, all the springs went, and you really had to sort of be really good about not trying to hold on with that one, because I'd fall in love with certain things, but then
because a transition would work so brilliantly.
Yeah, like certain shots would marry together so well, but for the idea of the greater thing, you'd have to throw that away to get something else.
Sure.
And it was constantly in flux.
You go to a lot of shots of the cat, which was interesting because it's like a MacGuffin. You're like, what's this cat about?
Anytime we cut to anything in close-up without explanation, you're kind of going...
Yeah, you're like,
is that
wait,
a clue?
Is that a clue?
When Nick comes home and gets ice cream, when it was like, eat your vegetables, and he gets the ice cream and feeds the cat, when we're in that stage of trying to compress the movie and get it, because we're about 10 minutes longer than what David wanted it to be. So time was always on my mind of compress. So I was like, let's get rid of the cat, and I came at David twice trying to get rid of that cat in that particular scene. And he spoke to me about it, and he said, the cat's going to do us a lot of favors because it humanizes Nick. It just gives him that gentler side, and it helps you like him, the fact that he loves this other thing. I think David's favorite shot in the movie is Nick with the cat as the door slams and he locks himself in the room, and it does that push in on there. He's just there with his cat, just like, this is what I've been reduced to, the spare room with just me and a cat.
There's a great scene where the detectives are basically coming at Nick very hard because they're like, we trusted you, we don't believe, and the way you cut that was almost this dragnet type cutting where it's like this person talks and this person talks and this person talks. But it was because of that, it felt very violent.
No, I always, in those sorts of scenes, I always look for moments when I don't have to cut. I'll always try to find areas where I can just be on the person listening. But the 2 cops are attacking him. And it feels best to go, to see them, stick the dagger in. When I first put it together, I was really happy with it. And David made me change takes of Bone. He said, loosen her up. Like Gilpin should be the one that's aggro. And in the first part of her scene, she can't be hysterical. I think I went for the nastiest takes of her where she was really going at him and joined all those together, but it was a little shrill. I remember at the time liking it, but we aired her out.
She sort of progresses to,
so she works her way up to it.
Through that scene.
But she's also working, so she shouldn't lose it. Like she knows what she's doing. She's working him. She's getting him on the hook, and then she goes. So it was an interesting one. I enjoyed the sort of delicate reshaping of that under David's direction. It definitely made her character better. Anyway.
Well, then the violence of him smashing the glass on the ground.
But just dopey man just getting pinned back, going, oh, this isn't fair. The next one is like the most delicious scene in the movie. That kind of worked from the first assembly. There's a lot of blood in this scene, and there were a lot of takes to get it accurate. It's like almost like a ballet. The blood is on the sheets in different patches everywhere. The continuity is totally screwed up in all of the blood. And David was self-conscious of this. So by doing all of the fades at first, it sort of forgave that. And then later on, fixed everything up afterwards.
Sure,
and
added blood.
Yeah, like he added
so it was consistent.
And got it consistent everywhere and added more spurts and things and got everything ghoulish and wonderful. Because, I mean, it totally functioned as an edit, as a clean edit. And then the moment we did the fades, it actually got to be leaner. And I as soon as we did it, I loved it. There's something about it that's sort of saying that's all you need to see. And it was very violent. It was almost like slashing at you.
Sure.
And it kind of, I don't know, it felt really cool. Like it solved one problem for David, like a technical kind of thing. But in the end, you know, it just looked cool.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that it sort of compressed it, because the other violence is very quick.
We take all our time leading up to it, and we take our time after it, because it's that whole decision to do violence. It's not the glorification of the violence. It's the sort of, will you do this? Are you going to do this act? It's the waiting for it. It's that great shot, waiting.
Tell me about cutting together when different people are watching the same TV program. I
love doing that.
It was so great. You know, it almost felt like they were in the same room together, even though they were in different places.
So the first thing that I cut was the actual interview. Was Nick's interview. And that's its own piece of material.
Sure.
And you kind of just do that as if it's, you know, that's all that exists. And then the two sides, and how we sort of discovered that in order to change locations, to go from one living room to another, we went through the TV every time. Like we'd never cut two characters in different places. That was always the journey.
I think that's probably why it felt like they were sort of almost in the same room, because you would always go to the TV and then go out.
And then there was one time when I kind of got a nice little flurry that worked when I kind of put characters together that was fun. But we sort of went, no, let's make this easier for everybody and always like keep the rule going of always going through the television. It's always like the more complex it gets, the more moving parts, the more fun it is to do. And if you kind of get, like the scene in the kitchen towards the end of the film, and it's like, here's a close and there's a wide and they've both got a close and there's nothing there. It was really hard. And every time I was working on it, I was kind of going, ugh. And it's hard emotionally and it's uncomfortable. But it was never a joy to work on that. It's the simplest thing to edit, but it was always a bit of a, like, but then you kind of,
well, the compositions are so boom, boom.
But there's nowhere to hide either. And it doesn't have
there's no
momentum and you're supposed to just suffer through it, you know? But the scenes with the TVs, you can stay in the TV and you've got so much where you could just, you know, be entertained and just hold on a close-up of the TV, and then you'd pop out for these little reactions, and it's all cynicism, and it's all megalomania, and like it's just highlighting the worst of everyone and enjoying it.
I thought that it was really effective when you were just about to show his interview with Sharon. She asked the question, and then you just jump to after the interview, and you're like, wait.
There's the lead up to the interview, and it stops, and then you have to wait for it to actually come on the air.
It was very effective.
It doesn't come in real time.
There's a couple very violent acts where you have these dissolves in the middle of it, and it's almost something that commercials do a lot. What was the choice to use that?
There's two of them. There's two times that happens, and they both have, I guess they have a similar effect, but they were done for different reasons. The first one is from a diary that has violence, and it's the scenes done in slow motion. And I think it's a way of condensing, so you can just use the best parts. But I think it helps say, here's my version of the story. Here's my version of the truth. It's not done with continuity. It's not done with complete accuracy. It's sort of, It's storytelling.
It has a dreamlike quality to it.
Exactly. So it's sort of, it's got a perception to it, like one person owns it. At least that's what I was, what David and I were both talking about when we were doing it. And I think it also really allows you just to use the exact bit that works, and you don't get caught up with how to join them together.
Mm-hmm.
I found this a lot with towards the end of the movies, that you really want to, like, just get them as concise as you possibly can.
Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
No, thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Nick is involved in the disappearance of our daughter.
Without a body, without a murder weapon, their only hope is a confession.
Don't know anything yet?
You need to tell me.
How was your marriage, Nick?
Are you asking me if I killed my wife?
Man of my dreams. This man of mine may kill me.
What about my son? Nick!
This man may kill me. In her own words,
This man may truly
kill me.
You ever hear the expression, simplest answer is often the correct one?
Actually, I've never found that to be true.